Hey everyone, you're watching Luxurious Tale. If you enjoy rich, emotional stories with powerful twists, kindly hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and share your thoughts in the comments. Now, let's dive straight into today's story. Sebastian Harrington was a name that echoed through the glass towers of London's financial district like a legend whispered with reverence. He was not merely wealthy, he was mythic. Newspapers called him the gentleman billionaire, a man who built empires without scandals and changed lives without demanding praise. His foundation rebuilt inner-city schools, funded kidney dialysis centers, and paid university tuition for thousands of disadvantaged students. To the public, Sebastian was proof that immense wealth did not always corrupt the soul. At 42, tall, composed, and effortlessly elegant, he carried himself with quiet authority, never flaunting his power, never reminding people how much he controlled. Yet everyone knew, when Sebastian Harrington spoke, industries shifted. Despite his global success, Sebastian remained deeply invested in family. His younger brother Nathaniel and sister Eleanor lived in comfort entirely funded by him. He paid their mortgages, their business failures, their children's private schools, and their holidays. They rarely thanked him, but Sebastian convinced himself love did not always need gratitude. His fiancée, Victoria Langford, embodied grace and refinement. She attended charity galas at his side, spoke passionately about humanitarian causes, and seemed to adore the life they were building together. Their wedding was already whispered about as the society event of the year. To the world, Sebastian's life looked flawless. But beneath the admiration and applause, a quiet unease had begun to grow inside him. It started the day he read about another billionaire philanthropist who had once been celebrated just like him. The man had lost his fortune in a sudden financial collapse, and as his wealth disappeared, so did everyone around him. Friends vanished. Family abandoned him. Alone and broken, he had taken his own life. The article haunted Sebastian. For the first time in his life, he asked himself a question that refused to leave his mind: if everything I have vanished tomorrow, who would still stand beside me? Sebastian tried to dismiss the thought, but it followed him everywhere. It lingered during board meetings, whispered during charity events, and echoed in the silence of his penthouse at night. He watched people more closely now, how their smiles lingered when he entered a room, how conversations shifted toward financial needs, how laughter died the moment he excused himself. Even Victoria, whom he loved deeply, spoke often about the future they would enjoy rather than the life they would build together. He told himself he was being paranoid, that wealth naturally attracted dependency, not deception. At a private dinner with his siblings, the unease sharpened. Nathaniel complained bitterly about the allowance Sebastian sent him, calling it insultingly small despite it exceeding most people's annual salaries. Eleanor mocked Sebastian's philanthropy, accusing him of caring more about strangers than family. Neither asked about his health, his stress, or his happiness. They spoke as though his success was a permanent resource they were entitled to drain endlessly. Sebastian listened quietly, his expression unreadable, but something fractured inside him that night. Later, alone with his longtime personal assistant Oliver Grant, Sebastian finally voiced his fear. If I became nothing tomorrow, he asked softly, would any of them still love me? Oliver hesitated before answering honestly. He admitted he didn't know. That uncertainty was more painful than any betrayal. That night, as rain streaked down the windows of his penthouse, Sebastian made a decision that would change everything. He would strip away the illusion of wealth, not by losing it, but by pretending it no longer mattered. Only then would he learn the truth. The Harrington family gathering was meant to be celebratory. Relatives filled the estate, champagne flowed freely, and laughter echoed through marble halls. Victoria moved gracefully among the guests, radiant in an elegant gown, her smile flawless. Sebastian played his role perfectly, greeting everyone warmly, hiding the storm brewing beneath his calm exterior. Only Dr. Richard Collins, his trusted physician, knew the truth of what was about to unfold. Midway through the evening, as Sebastian rose to make a toast, his voice faltered. The glass slipped from his hand. In seconds, he collapsed to the floor, his body convulsing as panic erupted around him. Screams filled the room. Victoria rushed forward, fear etched across her face. Nathaniel froze, while Eleanor shouted for help more out of shock than concern. Paramedics arrived swiftly, rehearsed and precise. Sebastian was rushed away as guests whispered in terror, convinced they had just witnessed the fall of an untouchable man. At the hospital, Dr. Collins delivered the devastating news to the assembled family. Sebastian Harrington, he said gravely, was suffering from advanced kidney failure. Without an immediate transplant, he had no more than 2 weeks to live. The words landed like a death sentence. Cameras flashed. News spread instantly. London mourned its golden son. But as Sebastian lay alone in a private hospital room, listening to the distant chaos, his heart pounded, not from fear of death, but from anticipation. The test had begun. The first few days were overwhelming. Flowers flooded the hospital. Messages poured in from politicians, CEOs, and international charities. Public vigils were held. Victoria stayed by his side at first, holding his hand, crying softly, promising she would never leave him. Sebastian watched her carefully, searching her eyes for sincerity rather than performance. His siblings visited too, their concern loud but strangely hollow. They spoke more about legal matters, inheritance, and what would happen next than about his pain. By the 4th day, everything changed. The visitors became fewer. The messages slowed. Victoria stopped coming daily, offering excuses about emotional exhaustion and needing space. Nathaniel arrived once, angry rather than grieving, accusing Sebastian of never preparing them for life without his support. Eleanor followed, cold and distant, questioning why Sebastian had never arranged better insurance or ensured his wealth would be easily accessible after death. Their words cut deeper than any illness ever could. Left alone in the sterile silence of his hospital room, Sebastian felt the crushing weight of abandonment. Nurses passed by politely, unaware that the man before them was watching his world crumble by design. He questioned himself relentlessly. Had he misjudged everyone? Had his generosity bred entitlement instead of love? The loneliness was suffocating, and for the first time, Sebastian understood how easily a man could break when love vanished alongside money. As the days passed, Sebastian's phone became a symbol of his isolation. Calls went unanswered. Messages remained unread. Friends who once insisted on weekly dinners disappeared entirely. Business partners sent formal notes filled with polite sympathy but no warmth. The foundation quietly shifted leadership temporarily. Even the hospital room seemed colder, emptier, as though the walls themselves were retreating from him. Nathaniel stopped visiting altogether. Eleanor sent a single text asking about legal documents. Uncle Frederick Harrington called once, not to ask about Sebastian's condition, but to inquire whether financial support would continue after his death. Each interaction confirmed Sebastian's darkest fears. The people he had carried on his shoulders for years were already preparing to move on without him. Yet amid the darkness, one person remained constant, Oliver Grant. He visited daily, ensuring everything ran smoothly, shielding Sebastian from unnecessary cruelty. Oliver never asked for anything, never hinted at fear or self-interest. His loyalty was quiet, steady, unbreakable. It reminded Sebastian that genuine devotion still existed, rare, but real. Victoria finally returned on the 10th day. She looked different, tired, conflicted, her elegance dimmed by fear. She admitted she had been angry, terrified of losing the future she envisioned. She confessed she had resented him for placing her in a position where she might have to sacrifice something permanent. Sebastian listened silently, his heart aching but his resolve firm. This was the moment he had been waiting for. She sat beside him, trembling, and whispered that she didn't know if she was strong enough to watch him die. The honesty hurt, but it was real. For the first time, Victoria wasn't performing. She was terrified. And fear, Sebastian realized, was more revealing than cruelty. When she left that night, he wondered whether love could survive terror, or if terror always exposed its limits. Alone again, Sebastian questioned the morality of his test. Was it fair to push people to their breaking point? But the damage was already done. The truth, whatever it was, would soon be undeniable. With only days left before the supposed deadline, Dr. Collins announced that a donor was urgently needed. Silence followed. No one volunteered. Family members avoided the subject entirely. News outlets speculated, but behind closed doors, no one stepped forward. Sebastian watched hope evaporate, replaced by acceptance. Perhaps this was how love truly ended, not with betrayal, but with avoidance. Then, unexpectedly, Victoria returned. She looked resolute, her fear replaced with determination. She announced she would undergo testing to donate her kidney. The room fell silent. Sebastian felt his breath catch. This was not what he expected. This was not part of the plan. As she spoke, Victoria admitted she had realized that a life built on comfort alone was empty. That loving Sebastian meant loving the man, not the fortune. Her voice shook, but she did not waver. Sebastian turned away, tears burning his eyes. In that moment, the test reached its climax. Sebastian asked everyone to gather one final time. Family, friends, associates, all arrived, their faces masked with rehearsed sorrow. Security lined the walls. The atmosphere was heavy with expectation. They believed they had come to say goodbye. Sebastian stood, strong and composed. Slowly, deliberately, he revealed the truth. There was no illness. No failing kidneys. No impending death. The room erupted in chaos. Gasps, protests, outrage. He silenced them with one raised hand. Then he spoke, not with anger, but with devastating clarity. He recounted every absence, every cruel word, every moment of abandonment. He named names. Exposed intentions. The truth stripped them bare. Nathaniel shouted in fury. Eleanor cried injustice. Uncle Frederick demanded explanations. Sebastian listened, unmoved. He announced a permanent restructuring of his wealth. Only those who stood by him would benefit from his generosity. The rest were cut off, completely, irrevocably. Security escorted the unfaithful out. Their protests echoed down the corridor, powerless and humiliated. Sebastian felt no joy, only freedom. The weight of false love lifted from his shoulders. When the room finally emptied, only Sebastian, Victoria, Oliver, and Dr. Collins remained. Silence settled gently, no longer oppressive. Sebastian took Victoria's hand, gratitude shining in his eyes. She had failed at first, but she had returned when it mattered most. That was enough. The man who once feared losing everything realized he had gained the one thing money could never buy, truth. When the last echo of footsteps faded down the hospital corridor, Sebastian Harrington remained standing, his hands resting lightly on the edge of the bed that had served as the stage for the greatest deception of his life. The silence that followed was not awkward or heavy, it was cleansing. For the first time in weeks, the room felt honest. No forced sympathy. No greedy eyes calculating inheritance. Just truth. He slowly sat down, exhaustion finally catching up to him, not in his body but in his soul. What he had done could never be undone. He had exposed people, yes, but he had also exposed himself to heartbreak, disappointment, and the undeniable reality that generosity without boundaries breeds entitlement. Victoria stood a short distance away, struggling to process everything. Her emotions clashed violently, relief that Sebastian was alive, shame for her absence, and fear that she might still lose him in a way far worse than death. She had come ready to sacrifice a part of herself, only to discover that the test had never been about organs or illness. It had been about love when comfort disappears. Slowly, she stepped closer, unsure if she was still welcome. Sebastian looked up at her, his expression unreadable, and in that moment she realized how fragile forgiveness truly was. Oliver Grant quietly excused himself, giving them space. He understood that some conversations could not be witnessed. As the door closed, Sebastian finally spoke. His voice was calm, but heavy with truth. He told Victoria that her initial abandonment had hurt deeply, but her return, when she believed everything was lost, had mattered more than she could understand. Love, he said, was not about perfection, but about choice. And she had chosen him when it counted. Tears streamed down her face as she reached for his hand, knowing that this was not an ending, but a beginning forged in fire. News of Sebastian's revelation spread through London like wildfire. Headlines shifted overnight, from mourning to outrage, from pity to exposure. Social circles buzzed with speculation. Some praised his brilliance, calling the test a necessary reckoning in a world fueled by greed. Others condemned him, labeling him manipulative and cruel. Sebastian paid no attention to either side. He had not done it for applause or approval. He had done it to reclaim his life. Nathaniel Harrington felt the consequences immediately. His accounts were frozen. His luxury flat, paid for by Sebastian, was reclaimed. The business ventures he once boasted about collapsed without financial support. For the first time in his adult life, Nathaniel was forced to confront the world without a safety net. Eleanor fared no better. Invitations stopped coming. Friends who once flocked around her vanished. The same emptiness she had shown her brother now mirrored her own existence. They had mistaken access for entitlement and lost everything. Uncle Frederick and Aunt Margaret attempted public apologies, desperate interviews, and private messages begging for reconsideration. Sebastian declined them all. Forgiveness, he believed, did not always require restoration. Some lessons needed to remain permanent. The foundation quietly removed several board members who had distanced themselves during his illness. Those who stayed silent were replaced by people whose loyalty had been proven through action, not words. As his world reset itself, Sebastian felt lighter. Wealth was still his, but now it was no longer controlling him. He had learned that generosity must be paired with discernment, and that love must be tested not by comfort, but by crisis. Victoria moved out of the penthouse temporarily, not because Sebastian asked her to, but because she believed space was necessary. She needed to confront herself, to understand the fear that had driven her away when he needed her most. Alone in her quiet apartment, she replayed every moment of hesitation, every excuse she had used to justify her absence. Loving a powerful man had been easy. Loving a vulnerable one had terrified her. She sought counseling, not for appearances, but for growth. She volunteered anonymously at a dialysis center, watching patients cling to hope while facing genuine mortality. Each visit humbled her further. She realized that sacrifice was not grand gestures alone, it was presence, consistency, and courage. When she finally returned to Sebastian, she came without promises or expectations. Only honesty. Sebastian saw the change immediately. There was no performance this time, no rehearsed compassion. Victoria spoke openly about her fear of losing stability, of watching her life unravel. She didn't excuse it. She owned it. That honesty mattered more to him than perfection ever could. Slowly, trust began to rebuild, not instantly, but intentionally. They started again, not as Billionaire and Fiancee, but as two people learning each other from the ground up. Simple dinners. Long conversations. Shared silence. Love, stripped of illusion, grew stronger. Sebastian restructured his empire quietly but decisively. His foundation adopted stricter oversight, ensuring aid reached those who genuinely needed it rather than those who exploited proximity. Scholarships were now paired with mentorship. Donations were followed by accountability. He was still generous, but no longer blind. He also introduced a new initiative, crisis loyalty grants. Individuals who stood by others during hardship, caregivers, spouses, friends, were nominated and rewarded. The program shifted focus from wealth to character. Stories poured in, many heartbreaking, some inspiring. Sebastian personally read each one, reminded daily that humanity still held beauty beyond greed. Oliver Grant was promoted to Chief Operations Officer, his loyalty rewarded not with praise, but with trust. Sebastian learned to surround himself with fewer people, but better ones. Power no longer impressed him. Integrity did. At night, as he looked over the London skyline, Sebastian no longer wondered who would stay if he lost everything. He already knew. And that knowledge brought peace no fortune ever had. Sebastian proposed to Victoria again, not with cameras, diamonds, or grandeur, but with quiet certainty. It happened in a small garden behind a rehabilitation center his foundation supported. There was no audience. No pressure. Just truth. He told her this proposal was different. It came without safety nets. Without guarantees. He was asking her to choose him, not the name, not the lifestyle, but the man she had seen at his weakest. Victoria answered through tears, saying yes without hesitation. This time, there was no fear in her voice. Their engagement was announced modestly. No lavish parties. No spectacle. Just intention. For the first time, Sebastian felt that his future was built on something real. Nathaniel attempted reconciliation. Broken, humbled, he came seeking forgiveness. Sebastian listened, but did not restore what was lost. He offered guidance, not money. Opportunity, not comfort. It was the only way growth could occur. Eleanor never came. Pride kept her distant. Sebastian accepted it. Some relationships end not with closure, but with silence. Letting go, he realized, was not cruelty. It was self-respect. The wedding was intimate. No elite guest list. No opportunists. Just those who had stayed. Oliver stood beside Sebastian. Dr. Collins attended, not as accomplice, but as friend. Victoria walked down the aisle with confidence born from truth, not fantasy. Their vows were raw. Honest. They promised presence over perfection, courage over comfort, truth over illusion. It was not the wedding London expected, but it was the marriage that would last. Married life grounded Sebastian. He spent more time mentoring young entrepreneurs, less time chasing expansion. Wealth became a tool, not an identity. Victoria pursued advocacy work independently, refusing to live in his shadow. Together, they built something balanced. Real. Years later, Sebastian was no longer called the gentleman billionaire. He was known simply as a man of principle. His story became legend, not for the test, but for the wisdom it produced. He no longer feared loss. He understood it. Standing beside Victoria at sunset, Sebastian realized something profound: gold only shines when people reflect it back at you. Without love, it is just metal. He had lost illusions, but gained truth. And that made him richer than ever.